The scent of Arabian oud, subtle yet potent, clung to the air of the glass sky lounge, a whispered promise of luxury Zara had only ever observed from a distance. Tonight, though, the opulence pressed in, sharp and suffocating. The polished marble underfoot reflected the glittering golden skyline at sunset, a panoramic spectacle of Dubai Marina that seemed to mock her trembling hands. Every surface, from the shimmering crystal chandelier above to the 24K gold-plated tableware, gleamed with an unbearable perfection. She sat at a secluded corner table, a pearl on coarse cloth, her simple royal blue caftan, a stark contrast to the haute couture flowing around her. It was impeccably clean, a testament to her diligence, but the modest wear was visible to her own scrutinizing gaze. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach, a familiar companion these past few weeks. Yasmin, the HR director, had cut her overtime without cause, an impersonal decree that had unraveled the delicate balance of her existence. 3,000 dirhams, found and returned without a whisper, had felt like a testament to her unyielding honesty. Yet here she sat, clutching a worn leather purse. Inside it, only a crumpled 5-dirham note. It was meant for bus fare, an emergency shield against the sprawling city, but now it felt like a brand of shame. Her fingers, usually steady, traced the delicate embroidery on her sleeve, a small comfort against the cavernous anxiety within. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of anticipation for a blind date that already felt like a cruel jest. She yearned to disappear into the fading light outside, to become one with the distant skyscrapers, untouched by the scrutinizing eyes she imagined upon her. The grandeur of the Majlis setting, meant for celebration and connection, instead amplified her isolation. Each hushed conversation around her, each clink of expensive cutlery, felt like a judgment. Then, a soft voice, like the gentle rustle of silk, broke through her anxious thoughts. "My dear, why are you sitting here so completely alone?" Zara startled, her gaze darting towards the sound, finding an elegant woman standing beside her table. The newcomer's silk abaya, intricately embroidered with gold thread, shimmered under the lounge lights, a testament to a world Zara merely served. A scent of jasmine and amber, distinctly different from the oud, wafted from her, an inviting warmth that momentarily cut through the chill of Zahra's apprehension. The woman's smile was gentle. Her eyes, framed by kohl, held a knowing kindness that seemed to peer beyond Zara's modest exterior to the churning sea of worry beneath. A subtle tremor ran through Zara's frame as she struggled for a coherent response, her voice barely a whisper against the hum of the lounge. She felt a blush creeping up her neck, exposed and vulnerable under this unexpected scrutiny. I am waiting," Zara managed, the words catching in her throat, a flimsy shield against an intrusion she wasn't prepared for. The woman, however, remained unfazed, her posture radiating in serene confidence that made Zara feel even more acutely her own disquiet. She settled into the opposite chair, her movements fluid and graceful, an uninvited guest who somehow made the space feel more, rather than less, her own. A silence stretched between them, not entirely uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken questions and the weight of Zara's internal turmoil. She instinctively clutched her worn purse tighter, the small amount inside feeling like a burden, not a comfort. The woman's gaze lingered on Zara's hands, then softened further. "Waiting can be a lonely endeavor in a place like this, my dear, especially when one's spirit seems as heavy as the night sky before the first stars appear." Her voice carried a lulling quality, a melody that offered an unexpected solace, yet also stirred a deeper sense of unease within Zara. It was a rare experience to be seen, truly seen, beyond the surface of her quiet presence. She was used to being invisible, a shadow flitting through the opulent halls of wealth, servicing the needs of others. This direct, empathetic acknowledgement felt foreign, almost unsettling in its intimacy. Zara found herself unable to avert her eyes, drawn into the depth of the woman's gaze, which held no judgment, only a profound understanding that hinted at a life richly lived and perhaps its own share of quiet sorrows. The glittering cityscape outside continued its indifferent dance, but here, in this small pocket of conversation, the world seemed to hold its breath. A faint hope, thin as desert mist, began to unfurl in Zara's chest. quickly followed by the familiar prickle of suspicion. Her life had taught her to be wary of unexpected kindnesses. They often came with a price she could ill afford. Yet the woman's presence was undeniably soothing, a balm to her agitated spirit. "Perhaps," Zara finally murmured, a genuine smile attempting to surface, but faltering at the edge of her lips. She thought of Yasmin's cold directives, the constant struggle to maintain her meager existence, the endless grind that had worn down her once vibrant spirit. This lounge, with its hushed luxury, had felt like a cage, amplifying her sense of inadequacy. Now, with this woman's gentle presence, it still felt overwhelming, but perhaps a tiny crack of light had appeared. The potential blind date, the reason for her unbearable anxiety, faded momentarily into the background, eclipsed by this more immediate, enigmatic encounter. The jasmine and amber scent grew stronger, a silent invitation to an uncharted conversation. The quiet space between them stretched, filled only by the distant murmur of the lounge and the unspoken question in the woman's kohl-rimmed eyes. Zara's heart still held its quickened pace, but a different current now ran beneath the fear, a curious eddy of fascination. She felt herself drawn to the woman's calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the frantic energy that usually defined her own inner landscape. The woman's presence was like a rare bloom in the polished desert of the lounge, offering an unexpected shade. Zara's fingers instinctively released their grip on the worn leather of her purse, a small, unconscious surrender to the momentary respite. She had long learned to armor herself against the world's indifference, to keep her vulnerabilities closely guarded, but something in this encounter chipped away at her practiced reserve. It was a subtle unraveling, a loosening of the tight coil of anxiety that had been her constant companion. The woman's smile deepened, a silent acknowledgement of Zara's burgeoning comfort, or perhaps her quiet surrender. "Sometimes," the woman began, her voice a low, melodious hum that resonated with an ancient wisdom, "the most important invitations are the ones not spoken aloud. They are felt, deep within the heart, like the first stirrings of dawn before the sun breaks the horizon." Her words carried a poetic quality, an elegance that Zara rarely encountered in her day-to-day interactions. It was a language of nuance and suggestion, far removed from the blunt commands of her employers or the strained civilities of her social circle. Zara found herself mesmerized, caught in the gentle current of the woman's presence. The glittering lights of the marina outside, once a source of intimidation, now seemed a distant, almost irrelevant backdrop to this intimate exchange. A faint tremor of unease, however, still threaded through Zara's budding sense of ease. Life had taught her that such benevolent encounters often masked ulterior motives, that kindness, especially unbidden, often came with an unspoken obligation. She scanned the lounge, a fleeting glance, as if seeking confirmation of the woman's benign intent, or perhaps an escape route should her suspicions prove true. Yet the woman remained composed, her gaze unwavering, radiating an almost preternatural calm that both soothed and subtly unsettled Zara. It was as though the woman held a secret, a quiet understanding of the intricate dance between fate and choice that Zara herself was only beginning to perceive. The jasmine and amber scent now wove itself into the fabric of the air around them, a fragrant tapestry drawing Zara further into the enigmatic stranger's orbit. She wondered what profound experiences had etched such quiet wisdom into the woman's gaze, what stories lay hidden behind the serene smile. Zara, in her own modest existence, had only known the relentless pursuit of survival, the constant battle against a world that seemed determined to overlook her. To be seen, truly seen, was a disorienting experience, a mirror held up to a soul she often felt was fading. The thought of the blind date, the initial cause of her immense dread, now felt like a relic from a distant past, a concern eclipsed by the immediate mystery unfolding before her. This woman, with her gentle persistence, had managed to divert the very course of Zara's evening, perhaps even the trajectory of her despair. The unspoken question lingered between them, a delicate thread of anticipation. Would Zara dare to unravel it? Would she allow herself to be drawn into this uncharted conversation, risking the unknown for a glimmer of solace? The city pulsed outside, indifferent and vast, but within this small, luminous pocket, a new narrative was quietly beginning to unfold. Zara felt a hesitant breath catch in her throat, poised on the edge of a world she had only ever dreamed of, a world now gently beckoning, Layla swallowed hard, the unexpected weight of the encounter settling heavy in her chest, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She offered Rashid a strained smile, assuring him that Khalid, her guest, would arrive shortly and would handle all arrangements. Rashid, impeccable in his formal uniform with its subtle gold trim, hesitated for a moment, his gaze assessing, before forcing a polite smile in return. He promised to check back soon, a subtle warning veiled in courtesy, then retreated, leaving Layla to grapple with a surge of raw anxiety and the heavy burden of pretense. The lingering scent of oud, once a luxury, now seemed to cling to the air like a suffocating reminder of the escalating charade. She felt the warmth drain from her face, replaced by a chilling premonition, a cold dread that coiled in her stomach. The grandeur of the glass sky lounge, with its shimmering crystal and gilded accents, suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage set for an impending disaster, a public arena where her fragile composure was poised to unravel. Every hushed conversation, every clink of glasses from the surrounding tables seemed to amplify her isolation, transforming into an imagined judgment that pierced her already frayed nerves. She yearned for the anonymity of the city night, to simply disappear into the sprawling urban tapestry outside, far from the scrutinizing eyes and the unbearable weight of expectation. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, trembled almost imperceptibly, a silent testament to the turmoil raging beneath her composed exterior. The simple act of breathing felt monumental, each inhalation a struggle against the suffocating pressure of the moment. She could almost feel the threads of her carefully constructed composure beginning to fray, threatening to snap under the immense strain. The thought of Khalid's imminent arrival, once a source of anxious anticipation, now filled her with a profound sense of impending doom. This was no longer just a blind date, it was a precarious balancing act, a high-stakes gamble with her dignity. The glittering skyline outside, usually a beacon of opportunity, seemed to mock her with its unattainable perfection, reflecting only the vast chasm between her humble reality and the opulent world she was desperately trying to navigate. A cold sweat pricked at her hairline, and she fought the urge to wipe it away, fearing any gesture that might betray her escalating distress. The silence at her table, once a quiet respite, now pulsed with unspoken questions, a palpable tension that mirrored the frantic beating of her heart. She was a pearl on velvet, yet the velvet itself felt like a trap, its luxurious fibers entangling her in a web of deceit. Her gaze flickered to the entrance, a silent prayer forming on her lips, a desperate plea for a miracle that would spare her from the inevitable confrontation. The air grew heavy, thick with the unspoken, a prelude to the storm she felt brewing just beneath the surface of the lounge's polished calm. Every fiber of her being screamed for escape, for a chance to simply flee, but she was rooted to her seat, a captive of her own desperate circumstances, forced to await a fate she knew she could not control. The soft glow of the ambient lighting, meant to soothe, instead cast long, unsettling shadows that danced around her, mirroring the growing darkness within her own soul. This fragile moment, stretched taut and thin, felt like the calm before a devastating tsunami, and she braced herself for the impact. The unseen thread, once a phantom, now tugged with an undeniable force, guiding her toward a precipice of decision. Her breath hitched, a faint gasp swallowed by the velvet hush of the lounge, as the woman's deep, knowing eyes held hers in a silent communion beyond words. It was a gaze that offered not judgment, but a reflection of a possibility Zara had scarcely dared imagine, a life beyond the rigid confines of her daily struggle. The polished gleam of the majlis, which moments before had felt alien and imposing, softened into a backdrop for this intimate drama. Every fiber of her urged caution, an instinct honed by years in a world that demanded payment for every mercy. Yet another voice, a whisper from a long-dormant part of her soul, implored her to lean into this mystery, to loosen her grip on the familiar and let the current carry her. Jasmine and amber braided through the air, pulsing with a quiet energy that bypassed her conscious guard and settled in her chest. They spoke of untold journeys and hard-won wisdom, hinting at a path less traveled yet infinitely more compelling than the one she had carved. Zara's mind, usually a fortress of practicality and obligation, filled with images of liberation, horizons beyond Dubai's concrete and glass. She envisioned shedding the heavy cloak of expectation, freeing herself from the quiet despair that had clung like a second skin. This woman, with serene confidence and deep understanding, felt like a beacon, illuminating what had seemed impenetrable. The subtle shift she had sensed now gathered strength, threatening to dislodge her from the precarious perch of solitude. A delicate tension hummed between them, a silent symphony of unspoken questions. Zara's fingers, resting lightly on her lap, yearned to touch the cool marble to ground herself against the rising tide of feeling. Even that small gesture felt momentous, a commitment she was not yet ready to make. She felt the weight of the woman's unspoken solicitations, aware that even a small response might alter the course of her evening, perhaps her life. The known, however arduous, wrestled with the intoxicating pull of the uncharted. Her rational mind warned of Yasmin's cruel cuts, precarious finances, the constant threat of instability. Yet her heart, stirred from its long sleep, reached for more than survival. She walked a perilous tightrope, balanced between fear and a fragile, nascent hope. Outside, the marina lights that had once signaled her insignificance now shimmered with new meaning, reflecting not only wealth, but expansive potential. She realized with startling clarity that this encounter was no diversion, but a crucible, testing her resilience and willingness to embrace the unknown. The blind date that had tormented her disappeared from thought, eclipsed by this far more immediate challenge. The woman's presence mirrored not only Zara's fears, but the dormant courage within, the capacity for audacious choice she had long suppressed. Her gaze flickered to the silver ring on the woman's finger and back, searching for an anchor in the sea of uncertainty. Silence stretched, expectant, waiting for her to step into the beckoning unknown, or retreat to the familiar, if painful, comfort of solitude. Her breath caught, poised at the threshold of a new beginning, destiny suspended in the fragrant air, waiting for her answer. The threshold of a new beginning, so palpable for some, dissolved for Layla into the stark, unforgiving contours of her present. Hours earlier, the abrupt cutting decision of Yasmin, the HR director, had cruelly pruned her overtime, stripping away the fragile security she clung to. The injustice resonated deep within, a bitter chord in the symphony of her daily struggles. With the last wire sent to her ailing mother and the final dirham dispersed for her brother's looming school fees, a single, worn, 5-dirham note remained in her palm, a stark testament to her dwindling reserves. It felt less like currency and more like a symbol of her profound precarity, a fleeting promise against an encroaching tide of want. Her fingers tightened around the slender frame of her phone, a desperate connection to an unstable world. A whisper, raw and laden with unspoken pleas, escaped her lips, a silent "Ya Allah," an invocation born of profound fear, begging for Khalid not to deliver yet another blow to her already fractured existence. The air, still carrying a faint echo of jasmine and amber from moments prior, now felt heavy with her anxieties. Each breath she drew was a subtle act of defiance against the weight pressing down on her spirit. Her mind, usually a fortress of meticulously catalogued obligations, found itself adrift in a sea of hypothetical catastrophes, each wave threatening to capsize the small vessel of her hope. She felt the chill of impending financial winter, a cold dread seeping into her bones despite the warmth of the room. This wasn't merely about survival. It was about the crushing realization of how easily her meager efforts could be negated by a callous stroke of a pen, how swiftly stability could unravel into an abyss of uncertainty. From a nearby table, a figure of imposing calm observed her. Amir, her employer, a man whose wealth shimmered around him like an aura, wore a thobe of impeccable tailoring, its pristine fabric a silent declaration of his untouchable status. Over it, an embroidered bisht draped his shoulders, its intricate golden threads catching the subdued light, a stark contrast to Layla's threadbare hopes. His gaze, sharp and discerning, pierced the thin veil of her composure, stripping away the pretense of indifference she tried to maintain. It wasn't accusatory, nor overtly sympathetic, but rather a penetrating assessment, a silent weighing of her situation that made her skin prickle with an uncomfortable awareness. He was a silent sentinel, his presence a constant, unsettling counterpoint to her internal turmoil. The quiet hum of conversation around her, once a comforting background drone, now felt like a distant, unintelligible murmur, leaving her isolated within her own storm. She became acutely aware of the delicate dance between appearances and reality, the immense chasm separating her meticulously hidden desperation from the effortless opulence surrounding her. Every instinct screamed for retreat, for the anonymity that often served as her shield. Yet the weight of her responsibilities held her captive, tethering her to this moment, to the agonizing uncertainty of what the next hour, the next call, might bring. The very air around her seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken question, a silent demand for resilience in the face of insurmountable odds. The future, once a distant horizon, had compressed into a terrifying, immediate unknown, its shape dictated by the whims of others. The fragrant unknown beckoned, a subtle current pulling at the very edges of her resolve, threatening to sweep away the carefully constructed walls of her solitary existence. A warmth, unfamiliar and deeply resonant, began to unfurl within her chest, countering the perpetual chill of anxiety that had long been her constant companion. This was more than a mere suggestion. It was an insistent, silent call to embrace a path she had never dared to envision. The woman's presence, still and profound, served as an anchor in this swirling sea of nascent possibilities, her kohl-rimmed eyes mirroring a depth that Zara felt stirring within herself. The silver ring, once a distant symbol of a world beyond her grasp, now seemed to pulse with a quiet invitation, a beacon in the soft glow of the lounge. She found herself caught between the deeply ingrained instinct for self-preservation, a lifetime of cautious navigation, and a burgeoning desire to simply let go. The weight of her past, the endless grind, the cold dismissals, pressed against her, urging her to retreat to the familiar, if painful, comfort of what she knew. Yet the woman's serene gaze held a promise, a quiet understanding that whispered of a different kind of strength, one not born of endurance, but of surrender to the unexpected. The hushed grandeur of the majlis, earlier a source of oppressive scrutiny, now seemed to fade into a soft focus backdrop, irrelevant to the intimate drama unfolding between them. Each distant clink of crystal, each murmur of conversation, receded into an indistinct hum, leaving only the charged silence and the subtle, intoxicating scent of jasmine and amber. A tentative breath escaped her lips, a fragile exhalation that felt like a release of years of held-back emotion. The uncertainty, usually a paralyzing force, now carried an exhilarating edge, a thrill she had only ever encountered in the fleeting pages of a borrowed book. She realized with a startling clarity that this encounter was not merely a chance diversion, but a profound pivot point. It was an opportunity to shed the skin of her former self, to step into an identity not defined by scarcity or external judgment, but by the audacious courage to explore the unwritten chapters of her own story. Her fingers, no longer grasping, lay open, ready to receive whatever the enigmatic flow might bring. The prospect of the blind date, the catalyst for her initial dread, had dissolved into an ethereal wisp of memory, utterly eclipsed by the immediate, captivating mystery before her. This woman, with her quiet power, had managed to reorient Zara's entire internal compass, shifting her focus from survival to something far more profound: discovery. A delicate tension, almost palpable, stretched between them, an unspoken agreement that the moment demanded a choice, a commitment to either retreat or advance. The city outside, with its indifferent sprawl, continued its rhythmic pulse, yet within this luminous pocket, time seemed to slow, expanding to accommodate the momentousness of her decision. The fabric of her destiny, once tightly woven and predictable, now felt loose, shimmering with the potential to unravel into something entirely new. Her heart, once a frantic drum, now beat with a steady, hopeful rhythm, poised to accept the invitation she had unknowingly awaited. Layla's initial disbelief at Amir's words, a blend of overwhelming gratitude and lingering uncertainty, slowly transformed into a deep, unwavering resolve. The weight of years of quiet struggle, the endless cycle of barely making ends meet, seemed to dissolve under the gentle yet firm gaze of her employer. The grand marble palace atrium, with its soaring ceilings and gleaming surfaces, no longer felt intimidating, but instead offered a sense of profound possibility, a tangible representation of the expansive future Amir had so unexpectedly laid before her. Yasmin, the HR director, still stood with a stiff posture, the corporate policies she embodied momentarily eclipsed by the undeniable force of Amir's will, a testament to his quiet authority that resonated throughout the hushed office. Layla felt a strength bloom within her, a silent vow to honor this unforeseen gift, to cultivate the seeds of opportunity that had just been sown. The memory of Khalid's sneering face, the biting words that had stripped her of dignity, began to recede, replaced by the profound affirmation of her inherent worth. It was a liberation, a shedding of the invisible chains that had bound her to a life of quiet subservience. The thought of learning, of expanding her mind beyond the practicalities of daily survival, sparked a joy she hadn't felt in years, a bright, clear flame in the depths of her soul. She imagined the quiet satisfaction of mastering new skills, of proving to herself and to the world that her potential stretched far beyond the confines of her past. The world, once a daunting adversary, now seemed to beckon with newfound promise. Amir's unwavering belief in her integrity, a belief he had openly championed in front of a room full of judgmental strangers, imbued her with a confidence she had never known. It was more than just a job or an education. It was a profound act of recognition, a declaration that her honesty was a treasure, far more valuable than any material possession. The tears that had welled in her eyes were no longer those of shame or sorrow, but of profound gratitude, a testament to the transformative power of genuine kindness. She stood a little straighter, her shoulders, once hunched with the burden of expectation, now held with a newfound grace. The vision of her mother's proud smile, of her brother's bright future, fueled her determination. This was not just for her, it was for them, a chance to break the cycle of hardship that had defined their lives. The bustling city outside, once a symbol of unattainable luxury, now seemed to pulse with a different kind of energy, an invitation to participate, to contribute, to thrive. The phrase "pay it forward," Amir's parting words, echoed in her mind, a powerful mantra that resonated with the deepest chambers of her heart. She understood, with absolute clarity, that this was not merely a transaction, but a sacred trust, a beacon to guide her path. A quiet hum of anticipation settled within her, a feeling entirely distinct from the dread that had once been her constant companion. This was the hum of a new beginning, the subtle vibration of a destiny being reshaped, not by chance, but by the audacious courage of one man and the unwavering integrity of another. The path ahead, while still veiled in the mist of the unknown, felt less daunting, illuminated by the profound justice that had been bestowed upon her. She was ready, truly ready, to embrace the unfolding chapters of her story, to walk into the future with head held high, a pearl finally placed upon velvet. The cold dread in Layla's stomach solidified, a heavy stone dragging her into the plush velvet seat. The implication hung in the air, a demand she could not meet. Her trembling fingers sought the worn leather of her purse. Nails scraped the familiar texture, a small, desperate sound in the sudden silence. Heart hammering, she slowly produced the crumpled 5 dirham note, its modest value an embarrassing testament to her reality. The single bill felt scorching in her palm, exposed and utterly inadequate against the glass sky lounge. Khalid's smirk dissolved into a braying laugh that sliced through the hushed elegance, too loud and cruel. 5 dirhams? His incredulous voice carried across the tables, drawing attention. That's what you brought to a place like this? The contempt hit like a physical blow. Layla's throat tightened. She fixed her gaze on the gleaming 24K gold-plated tableware. Every reflective surface mirrored her shame, amplifying the chasm between her life and the extravagant display. Heavy silverware, sparkling crystal, intricate china all seemed to mock her crumpled bill. His voice rose, dripping scorn, each word a venomous dart. "You really should have warned me," he sneered, leaning back with utter disdain. "You want a maid's salary and you drag me here? What were you thinking?" The question was a public accusation designed to maximize humiliation. Conversations hushed. Diners cast furtive glances that pressed down on Layla. The lounge felt like a suffocating cage. She wished the polished marble would open and swallow her whole. Her hands, still clutching the note, shook violently. The quiet dignity she'd maintained was shattering, leaving her exposed. A searing blush crept up her neck, announcing her embarrassment to everyone. The golden skyline at sunset, once majestic, now gleamed with a predatory light, casting accusing shadows across the table. Every fiber of her being screamed for escape, for the anonymity of the streets. A bitter, metallic taste coated her tongue as the full weight of the moment settled. This was deliberate cruelty meant to strip her of self-respect. The air around them grew thick with unspoken disapproval, a tension that crackled and hummed, sealing her fate. The delicate scent of Arabian oud, usually a promise of luxury, felt cloying, a suffocating perfume of despair. She wanted to disappear. The weight of public shame was unbearable. She stared at the meager note, now the catalyst of torment. The irony stung. Her honesty, the return of thousands, had left her with this paltry sum, now wielded against her. A single hot tear traced her cheek. She dabbed it away with a trembling fingertip, refusing Khalid the sight of her breaking. Her jaw ached from clenching, vision blurred at the edges, yet she clung to a fragile resolve not to crumble. She was a pearl, scraped and tarnished, cast aside among polished gems and glittering gold, utterly out of place. Humiliation deepened, a burning fire spreading through her veins against the elegant coolness of the lounge. Seconds stretched into an eternity, a slow-motion replay of mortification. The diner's whispers became a roaring chorus, amplifying her isolation. She closed her eyes briefly for refuge, but Khalid's sneer and triumphant glare were seared behind her lids, an inescapable image. Breath shallow and ragged, she felt compressed by the pressure of her surroundings, a captive bound by invisible chains of shame in a setting turned torture chamber. The metallic tang of panic mixed with rich oud in her throat. She imagined the whispers and knowing glances dissecting her vulnerability, attaching the cruel label Khalid had uttered. Made. The word echoed. A brand. This was the cost of poverty, exposed in the most exquisite, brutal setting. She felt like a fragile vessel, meticulously crafted but cracking under public scrutiny and private despair, poised to shatter into pieces that each reflected a fragment of her shame. The murmuring unease rippled through the glass sky lounge, a collective discomfort shared by nearby diners at the charity auction. Layla's fingertip dabbed at the corner of her eye, a feigned nonchalance masking the sting of public shame. Khalid's voice, sharp with derision, cut through the opulent air, stopping her mid-gesture. "What? You thought I was going to pay for some luxury show? You can't even cover bread." His words, brutal, intensified her humiliation as a sudden, palpable quiet settled on their table. She felt 1,000 tiny pinpricks of judgment from the other patrons, their eyes burning into her exposed vulnerability. A raw gasp caught in her throat, a fragile bird trapped within her ribs. The crystal chandelier above, once dazzling, now seemed to mock her with its cold brilliance, reflecting her shame in 1,000 fractured images. Every polished surface, from gleaming marble to gold-plated tableware, amplified the chasm between her humble reality and effortless opulence. Heat flooded her face, a visible scarlet stain announcing her embarrassment. She longed to melt into the plush velvet of her seat, to cease to exist under Khalid's merciless contempt and the complicit stares. Her hands, clenched in her lap, trembled. The quiet dignity she had maintained was crumbling. A bitter taste lingered as the full weight of her situation pressed down, a deliberate, calculated act of degradation meant to strip her of self-respect. The air grew thick with unspoken disapproval, a tension that crackled around her, sealing her in this glittering cage. The opulent prison held her fast. Each luxurious detail became torment. The silence around them deepened into a heavy shroud of complicity. She closed her eyes for a fleeting second, but Khalid's triumphant smirk was seared behind her lids. The distant clinking of glasses and hushed conversations, once a pleasant hum, swelled into a deafening roar that amplified her isolation. A cold wave of despair threatened to drown her. There was no refuge from this calculated cruelty. Every fiber of her being protested, but no sound escaped her constricted throat. Utterly exposed, she felt like a fragile vessel cracking under unbearable pressure. This was true agony, a crucible of public shaming that would etch itself into memory, a wound to fester. A captured bird with clipped wings, her song silenced, she longed for an end to the torment, for a swift, merciful escape from this gilded hell. The next breath felt impossible, lodged between ribs and the suffocating weight of humiliation. Her identity, once quiet pride, had been reduced to that single, devastating insult. echoed by indifferent onlookers. The silence at their table was a brutal testament to Khalid's remorselessness and her own consuming despair, leaving her adrift and seeking an unseen sanctuary the glittering lounge could not offer. The oppressive silence of the lounge, thick with unseen judgment, shattered as Khalid released a dismissive snort. "Honestly, I should have known," he drawled, his voice laced with arrogant condescension that twisted Layla's stomach. He leaned back, a cruel smirk playing on his lips as his gaze swept over her. A slow inspection that felt like a calculated assault. "Just look at you." The words, seemingly innocuous, bore the weight of 1,000 criticisms. The grand crystal chandelier, moments before promising, now felt like a predatory eye, magnifying her exposed vulnerability in unforgiving reflections. Her heart hammered, a trapped bird frantic for escape. The pristine white tablecloth blurred through the film of tears she fought not to release. To weep now would be surrender. A fragile defiance clung to her, fraying under pressure. She clenched her jaw, biting back the retort that would only fuel his glee. The rich scent of Arabian oud, once luxury, now felt cloying, mingling with the metallic tang of panic. "Don't tell me you scrub floors or something," Khalid continued, his voice dripping mock concern. The implication hung in the jasmine-scented air like a poisonous fog. Surrounding diners, frozen in their opulent tableau, became unwilling accomplices, their silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. Her breath hitched, a dry gasp only she heard, lungs constricted by shame. Every muscle tensed, there was no escape. She wished the marble floor would open and swallow her. "Oh, wait, maybe you do," he added, eyes glittering with satisfaction. "A maid, right? That explains it." The single word seared her consciousness like a physical slap, stealing her air. Her hands shook violently. A hot blush crept up her neck, bathing her face in crimson, announcing her humiliation to every indifferent eye. The facade of dignity she'd worn, a quiet promise of a future, shattered into fragments. She shrank into the velvet of her seat, desperate to disappear into the opulence, to vanish from his contempt. The majlis, all crystals and gold, had become a luxurious prison. Every gleam mocked the chasm between their worlds. Her universe narrowed to Khalid's sneer, and the suffocating shame threatening to engulf her. Pity and judgment hung thick, pressing down on the last ember of her spirit. She closed her eyes for a second, pleading for oblivion, but his triumphant smirk was already seared behind her lids. The distant clink of glasses and low murmurs swelled into a deafening roar, amplifying her isolation. A cold wave of hopelessness threatened to drown her. Every luxurious detail seemed to mock her humble reality. Every fiber protested silently against the injustice, but no sound escaped her constricted throat. Utterly exposed, she felt a fragile vessel cracking under pressure, poised to shatter. This public shaming would etch itself into memory, a wound long after the moment passed. She was a captured bird, her wings clipped, her song silenced. Each breath felt monumental. Her identity, once a quiet source of pride, had been reduced to that single humiliating word, affirmed by silent onlookers. The silence at their table was not only deafening, it testified to Khalid's remorselessness and her despair, leaving her adrift in a sea of unspoken pain, longing only for an end to the torment. The public shaming would etch itself into memory. She was a captured bird, wings clipped, song silenced, suffering beneath an indifferent, scrutinizing glare. Each next breath felt monumental. Her identity, once a quiet source of pride, had been reduced to that humiliating word, echoed and affirmed by onlookers. The silence at their table was not only deafening, it was proof of his remorselessness and her consuming despair, leaving her adrift in unspoken pain and longing for an end to the torment. A new voice, distinct from the hushed murmurs and Khalid's cutting sneers, sliced through the heavy air, drawing all eyes to its source. Rashid, the floor manager, now stood beside their table, his presence commanding, yet subtly colored by the simmering tension. His voice, crisp and formal, broke the spell of humiliation, though it offered little comfort. "Excuse me, ma'am, sir," he began, his gaze sweeping over Layla and then Khalid, a polite but undeniable challenge. "Without a valid card, in accordance with our policy, "We'll need to release the table." The words, though directed at both, felt like another blow to Layla, underscoring her perceived inadequacy. The golden skyline, once a breathtaking backdrop, now shimmered with an almost cruel indifference, reflecting her burning shame in its distant, glittering facades. She felt a familiar knot of despair tightening in her throat, her voice a fragile whisper against the lounge's opulent hum. "Then I'll go," Layla managed, the words catching, laced with a pain she could no longer hide. "I don't want to cause any trouble." She pushed back her chair, the scrape a jarring sound in the sudden quiet, rising with a desperate need to escape. Her worn leather purse, clutched tight against her, felt like a shield against a world determined to strip her bare, her humiliation a raw, exposed wound that throbbed with every beat of her frantic heart. Layla's breath, already ragged from humiliation, caught in her throat as the loud scrape of a chair across the polished marble floor pierced the thick atmosphere of the glass sky lounge. Every head in the opulent room, a blur of curious and judgmental faces, swiveled towards the sound, their hushed whispers abruptly silenced. Amir, her powerful employer, stood, a figure of regal composure in his cream-colored thobe, an intricately embroidered bisht draped over his shoulders, exuding an aura of understated, yet undeniable authority. His gaze, usually calm and discerning, now held an unyielding intensity as he addressed the stunned room. His voice, steady and clear, carried effortlessly across the sudden hush, declaring, "That won't be necessary." Layla froze, a wave of horrified recognition washing over her, her mind reeling as she met the unflinching gaze of the man she least expected to witness her profound shame. The golden skyline outside, a testament to unreachable dreams, seemed to spin with her sudden disorientation. The intervention, sharp and unexpected, twisted a fresh knot of dread in her stomach, even as it offered a sliver of bewildering hope. Her employer, the formidable Amir, was here, a silent falcon suddenly alighting amidst the chaos of her public undoing. She wished the plush velvet of her seat would swallow her whole, allowing her to vanish before his presence could further magnify her vulnerability. The rich scent of oud, once comforting, now felt heavy, almost suffocating, as she grappled with the surreal reality of his intervention. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of terror and a strange, nascent anticipation. The entire lounge seemed to hold its breath, a collective pause suspended in the shimmering air, as Amir's silent command settled over the room, an invisible force reshaping the narrative of her humiliation. She felt her face burn, a blush of mortification at being seen, truly seen, in such a compromised state, by the very person whose respect she valued most. A sharp gasp escaped Layla, a fragile sound that fractured the pristine silence. She began to speak, her voice a desperate whisper laced with fresh embarrassment, attempting to explain, to diminish the escalating scene. Yet Amir's gaze, steady and profound, held hers captive, an unflinching anchor in the swirling chaos. His imposing presence commanded the lavish room, drawing all attention and silencing every rustle and murmur, freezing the air around them. The opulent glass sky lounge with its shimmering crystal and gilded accents became a tableau, suspended in a moment of potent tension. Khalid, however, broke the spell, blinking rapidly, his initial shock giving way to a cruel, slow smirk that spread across his features like a venomous stain. His eyes, once wide with disbelief, now gleamed with a predatory satisfaction. "Oh, so you know her," he drawled, his voice thick with condescension, the words dripping with contempt. "That explains a lot. I figured she works for you, given everything." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over Layla with calculated disdain before turning back to Amir, a mocking challenge in his tone. "You're really going to save your maid in front of everyone? Are you serious?" The word maid hung in the jasmine-scented air, a vile, poisonous vapor intended to strip Layla of any remaining dignity, each syllable a fresh lash of public shaming. The insult, that singular, poisonous word, had seared itself into Layla's spirit, leaving a raw wound where her quiet dignity once stood. Her being recoiled, a flinch that passed through her, though she remained frozen in the plush velvet seat, captive in the lounge's luxury. The lingering scent of oud, once pleasure, now mocked her, heavy and cloying, mingling with the metallic tang of hopelessness. She tasted bitterness, the residue of self-worth consumed by Khalid's casual cruelty, a public execution of esteem witnessed by indifferent eyes. Her gaze, fixed on an elusive exit, blurred beneath a torrent of shame. She longed for her room, for darkness where wounds could be nursed unseen, away from the glittering glare of this torment. Every muscle tightened, poised on the edge of retreat. She silently begged the floor to open and swallow her, to erase her from this tableau. Just as her composure threatened to shatter, a new presence cut through the judgmental silence like a cool blade. Amir, until then distant and observant, moved with a calm, deliberate stride, a quiet force parting the frozen diners. His tailored cream thobe flowed around him, a ripple of fabric that commanded attention and shifted focus from Layla's humiliation to his own authority. His dark, discerning eyes, usually reserved, held an unyielding clarity as they fixed on Khalid. The gold trim of his keffiyeh caught the light, a small beacon of command. Layla, reeling, registered his approach with a tremor that was not fear but fragile hope. Amir stopped beside their table. His voice, low and steady, filled the silence. "She's not just a maid." Each word struck precisely, dismantling Khalid's reduction of her. His gaze flicked to Layla, a protective warmth before hardening on Khalid. "She's Layla, and she is my guest." The declaration hung, undeniable, rewriting the moment. The room, which had seemed to hold its breath, let out a soft, collective sigh. Rashid, the floor manager and enforcer of policy, shifted uncomfortably. His uniform felt less authoritative under Amir's quiet presence. Amir produced a sleek black card, its elegance belying its power, and extended it to Rashid. His voice turned icy with command. "Place any hold you need on this." His gaze remained cold, a challenge admitting no argument. "And then apologize to her. She's the one who deserves it." Rashid visibly stiffened, then bowed his head. The power dynamic that had crushed Layla inverted with swift precision. Khalid, stripped of his audience and self-appointed power, flinched under Amir's will. His cruel smirk dissolved into stunned silence. The glass sky lounge, once the backdrop of her despair, became an arena of undeniable justice, illuminated by a man who saw worth beyond appearances. Layla watched as her world tilted, a profound shift promising an unforeseen future, her fractured identity beginning to reform under Amir's protective gaze. The air, once heavy with shame, now crackled with vindication, a silent symphony of justice unfolding. The floor manager, Rashid, his face etched with discomfort, swallowed hard and turned towards Layla, bowing almost imperceptibly. "Miss, my sincere apologies. My choice of words earlier was entirely inappropriate, and I regret any distress I may have caused." Layla, her eyes cast downwards, her slender frame trembling, managed a barely audible, "It's fine." Yet Amir's voice, sharp and incisive, sliced through the tense silence, leaving no room for dismissiveness. "No, Rashid, it is not fine. One does not apologize for enduring humiliation. Rather, the apology is owed by those who inflicted it upon you." A ripple of unease spread through the diners, causing them to subtly shift in their plush seats. Khalid, his smug grin still plastered across his face, sneered with undisguised contempt. "Wow, you're really putting on a grand display over this, aren't you? She's utterly penniless, man. Just look at her. She arrived with merely 5 dirhams, and you seriously intend to pretend she actually belongs in a place like this?" His words hung in the air, a final, poisoned arrow aimed directly at Layla's fragile composure. The glittering opulence of the glass sky lounge seemed to amplify his cruelty, each facet of the crystal chandelier reflecting the raw humiliation searing through Layla's veins. She felt exposed, stripped bare under the collective gaze of the room, every whisper an indictment, every averted eye a confirmation of her unworthiness in their gilded world. The elegant surroundings, once merely intimidating, now felt actively hostile, a luxurious trap designed to highlight her perceived inadequacies. Her breath hitched, a dry, painful gasp trapped in her constricted throat. The very air around her crackled with unspoken judgments, a heavy, suffocating blanket threatening to extinguish the last ember of her resilience. The scent of Arabian oud, no longer a comfort, now seemed to mingle with the bitter tang of her own shame, creating an intoxicating, sickening perfume of defeat. that clung to her like a second skin. Amir's regal composure, usually unshakable, now carried a hard edge. His jaw tightened as Khalid's insolence festered, a venomous current in the hushed lounge. The disdainful words hurled at Layla's quiet dignity struck a chord within him, a moral imperative he could not ignore. He leaned forward, gaze cutting through the opulent haze, fixing on Khalid with an intensity that silenced whispers and clinking crystal more effectively than any raised voice. "You wish to speak of money?" Amir's voice, sharp and authoritative, sliced through the smugness clinging to Khalid like cheap cologne. "Then let us pivot to something far more invaluable. Let us speak, Khalid, of integrity." A profound hush settled over the glass sky lounge, every eye now riveted on Amir. Layla, still reeling from Khalid's barbs, lifted her gaze, a fragile hope flickering as Amir's words pierced the suffocating cloud of shame, offering a lifeline in the indifferent vastness of the room. "Earlier today," Amir continued, his voice gaining a steely resonance that filled the lounge, "Layla found 3,000 dirhams. He paused, letting the sum settle, permitting the collective gasp to underscore its significance. 3,000 dirhams, discreetly placed on my desk, at a moment when no one would have known. No one would have been the wiser had she kept it, not one living soul." His words painted a vivid image of quiet honesty, a stark contrast to the glittering superficiality that had dominated judgment in the room. Layla's breath caught, shock swiftly followed by overwhelming gratitude as Amir publicly unveiled her secret act of integrity. "That," Amir declared, his voice rising with conviction, "that Khalid is who she truly is. That is the measure of her character. And that, I assure you, is worth infinitely more than every cheap, contemptible insult you dared hurl tonight." His gaze remained fixed on Khalid, unyielding, exposing the hollowness of materialistic judgment. "You attempted to diminish her, a woman of unblemished honesty, to the value of 5 dirhams. You tried to reduce her entire being, her spirit, to a sum you consider paltry. But her true value, Khalid, transcends any earthly currency, any transient gold." Layla's lips trembled, her hand rising instinctively to cover her mouth, a desperate attempt to stifle the surge of emotion. Tears, hot and shimmering with the cleansing light of vindication, slipped down her flushed cheeks, washing away the residue of humiliation. They were not tears of sorrow, but of liberating release, a confirmation that her unseen virtues had finally been recognized and fiercely defended. Outside, beyond the panoramic glass, the sunset skyline, once a mocking symbol of unattainable luxury, seemed to transform. Towering skyscrapers, bathed in amber and molten rose, framed a new beginning, a luminous horizon where dignity was restored and integrity shone brighter than any gold. The air around her, once heavy with judgment, now hummed with a quiet promise, an overture to an unwritten future, vibrant with possibility and earned respect. The urge to disappear consumed her, a singular, desperate command echoing in the hollow chambers of her chest, eclipsing the lounge's hushed opulence and the lingering scent of oud. Her feet, numb yet pulled by an unseen force, found purchase on the polished marble, charting a silent course toward the heavy glass doors, her only beacon in this glittering abyss. Each hurried step asserted autonomy, a frantic reclaiming of dignity Khalid had tried to strip away. The weight of unfamiliar gazes, no longer dissecting her humiliation, but curious about her flight, pressed on her back, urging her faster, away from the confusion of Rashid's intervention and into the anonymity of the city night. She imagined whispers following her, a faint chorus of judgment and speculation, yet their sting was muted by the need to vanish. The chill outside, a sharp contrast to the lounge's warmth, promised not discomfort, but raw freedom, a space to reclaim the fractured pieces of her spirit. The air thrummed against her eardrums, the pulse of her terror mingling with the distant roar of Dubai's traffic. This cacophony, once the city's indifference, now felt like an embrace, an impersonal cloak offering concealment from the lounge's scrutiny. She focused on the gleaming arch of the exit, a tunnel not to light but to shadow, to the comforting oblivion of being just another face. The audacity of her departure, a wordless rejection of Khalid's venom and Rashid's unexpected grace, felt like a silent scream of defiance. Her fingers, steadier now, pushed the cool glass, A shiver of raw emotion traced her spine as the doors swung open, inviting escape. A rush of cool night air shocked her heated skin, a gust carrying the metallic tang of the city and the sweet sharpness of jasmine. It cleansed her, an invisible balm to the evening's wounds, dissipating fear and shame that had clung like a second skin. She gasped, a deep breath that felt like the first true one all night, drawing in promise of renewal, of a chance to simply be. The neon skyline, once intimidating, shimmered with a different magic, a sprawl where stories could dissolve and begin anew. She did not look back. The glittering cage blurred into a grotesque dream. Her feet, suddenly light, carried her toward unassuming shadows, toward the quiet truth of her existence. The city's muffled symphony enveloped her, a blanket of sound muting Khalid's taunts and the unsettling power of Rashid's intervention. This was her world of quiet struggles and resilient spirits, where dignity was earned by perseverance, not inherited. She walked with no destination, only an urgent need to distance herself from the night's trauma, to shed its bitter taste. A faint ember of defiance began to glow, rekindling resolve to heal, endure, and eventually thrive. She was a ghost fleeing a ballroom, a specter seeking the profound silence of her own undoing, finding solace in the anonymity of the vast, indifferent night. The promise of a different dawn, free from others' piercing gaze, pulled her onward, away from the pain of a shattered past, toward an unwritten future. A collective exhale rippled through the elegant glass sky lounge as the stifling tension finally broke. Amir, his gaze now gentle, turned to Layla, his voice a soft, reassuring murmur that cut through the lingering unease. "Sit," he simply instructed, the word a quiet anchor in her storm. Her body, still trembling from the raw public exposure, resisted, a faint whisper escaping her lips. "Everyone is staring," she uttered, her eyes darting nervously across the hushed, opulent room, each face a silent, judgmental witness to her ordeal. Amir's tone, however, remained firm, imbued with an unwavering conviction that left no room for doubt. "Let them," he commanded, his eyes holding hers, pulling her back from the precipice of shame. They're not staring at shame anymore. They're staring at what respect looks like. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the rigidity left Layla's frame, and she sank back into the plush velvet chair, the fabric embracing her with a newfound, gentle comfort. A polite server, Tariq, approached their table hesitantly, his earlier nervousness replaced by an almost deferential caution in the presence of Amir's quiet authority. Without even glancing at the elaborate menu, Amir spoke, his voice calm and clear, ordering a simple, wholesome meal for Layla, roast chicken and an assortment of fresh vegetables. The plate, when it arrived, was presented on a gleaming platinum tea set, its subtle luster a deliberate, unspoken symbol of the profound respect and honor that had just been bestowed upon her. Layla, her voice barely audible, whispered, the words tinged with a raw, disbelieving gratitude, "You didn't have to do this." Amir's eyes remained locked on hers, a universe of understanding shining within their depths as he replied, "Yes, I did, because you gave me honesty when no one was looking. Tonight, I gave you dignity when everyone was." Her tears, which had earlier flowed from a wellspring of profound humiliation, now spilled anew, but this time, a fragile, tender smile bloomed through them, a luminous pearl on velvet, her true, unblemished worth now unequivocally recognized and celebrated. The quiet strength within her, long suppressed, began to assert itself, radiating outward, a beacon in the soft glow of the lounge. The chill of the night air, once a welcome shock, now underscored the stark reality of her solitude, each gust a reminder of the glittering cage she had escaped, the indifferent sprawl of the city, a tapestry of lights and muted hums, allowed her to dissolve into its anonymous embrace, shedding the last vestiges of the evening's public crucible. Her hurried steps, first frantic, settled into a steady pace, mirroring the reassertion of her inner equilibrium, a shift from a hummingbird heart to a steady pulse. Khalid's cruel words, still a phantom ache, began to recede, muffled by the urban symphony. Each passing car gently erased his venom. She focused on the cold pavement beneath her worn shoes, grounding herself away from the ethereal humiliation and unsettling beneficence of the lounge. The hint of a different dawn, once hidden in despair, solidified into a fragile beacon guiding her through the labyrinthine streets. Not a dawn of opulence or acclaim, but a personal sunrise free from external judgment and suffocating pretense. Her battered spirit, tender at the edges, found quiet strength in the simple act of putting one foot before the other, a testament to a resilience she had almost forgotten. The ghost fleeing a ballroom began to reform, solidifying with each deliberate stride, no longer ethereal but grounded and purposeful. She sought not the silence of undoing but the quiet of becoming, a rebirth in the indifferent heart of the city. The metallic tang of the air, mixed with exhaust, cleansed her senses, clearing the perfume of oud and jasmine that clung to the lounge. This raw reality felt honest, a stark contrast to the gilded deception she had fled. Her mind, once a tempest of shame and fear, found fragile clarity, sifting the evening's wreckage with a growing, quiet resolve. Rashid's intervention, complex with gratitude and discomfort, settled into a quieter corner, no longer immediate anxiety, but a distant echo of unexpected grace. She acknowledged the debt with a nascent understanding that true kindness often arrives unbidden. The city, once cold and imposing, now offered a strange, almost maternal embrace. Its vastness let her feel both insignificant and profoundly free. A single figure in millions, she found potent liberation within anonymity. Neon lights, once symbols of unattainable desire, twinkled with a different message. Endless possibilities, stories unfolding in every window and alley. Her journey was not retreat, but strategic withdrawal, regrouping for a battle she would fight on her terms. The faint flicker in the dark grew into a steady glow in her chest, a silent vow that this degradation would not define her but forge her. She absorbed the night's rhythms, the distant sirens, murmuring cafes, rustling leaves, each sound a thread in her reawakening. Solitude became sacred, a space to mend, recalibrate, and recall worth. She pictured her small apartment as a chrysalis, where she could shed the evening's remnants and emerge transformed. Shame, once an oppressive blanket, began to unravel, replaced by fierce, quiet pride in surviving calculated cruelty and still walking forward. This was the genesis of a new narrative, one she would author herself with hard-won wisdom. Her hands, steady now, felt the phantom weight of a pen, ready to inscribe her future at the center of her own tale. The promise of a different dawn was no longer a whisper, but a resolute declaration vibrating in every cell. She felt a profound shift from victimhood toward self-possession. The cool pavement bore witness to her quiet reclamation. Her steps, destinationless but full of momentum, carried a soul preparing for its independent unveiling. She inhaled the city night, drawing in the breath of her own blossoming courage, ready to face whatever lay beyond the veil of this transformative interlude, a chrysalis for a spirit on the cusp of flight.